All right. It's 5:58. It is 5:58 in Brooklyn. I am connected both live on Instagram and Facebook, and today we'll be making some bread together. So I'm gonna wait for about like a minute or two until you guys start, getting in and connecting, and then we'll start talking about, what's going on behind me, what's happening, and all that kind of stuff. So let's pour a drink, which I think is the most important. How are you guys? How's it going? I love you all. I miss you all. I just want to hug people. The other day I received a newsletter from a company that was called Handshake. Can you imagine having a company that's called Handshake? The exercise in branding and marketing that you'll have to do next year is gonna be insane. All right, so what are you drinking tonight? I am drinking my favorite, Ballast Point, the Sculpin IPA. This is one of my big time favorites. We are 6 o'clock, right on time. We got a couple of hundred people connected, so really happy. Super happy to see you. First things first. Any questions, I won't be able to read. I don't want to get distracted. So whatever questions you have about the work that we've been doing between tonight and tomorrow, post them here on Instagram or here on Facebook, and then I'll take my time and I'll drink a few more beers and I'll try to respond to everybody. All right. Second thing, I am not a bread maker. I am not a baker. And I am not a professional when it comes to baking bread. Baking bread for me is a way of having a watch. It gives me time, it gives me pace. It is a zen moment that I allow myself to have almost every day. I would say every other day. And it is super hard. I don't want to discourage you. I make so many mistakes constantly, and there are so many different variables that can affect your final result. And it's just insane, especially like all of you, when you do live in an environment that is not controlled. What do I mean by that? A door that can open while your bread is bench resting on the table. A kid like today that wants to do chicken nuggets in the oven while your bread is rising at temperature. So my dough moves through the kitchen. Some days I make a fantastic bread. Some days I make bread that is just good for breadcrumbs. It happens. So don't get discouraged. Shit happens, mistake happens, and we're just here to become a little better together. Yes, please bring back extra virgin. We're working on it. It's a little premature to talk about all that, but we'll be talking about it. Deborah right now is actually having a cocktail with friends on Zoom, but she's committed to get in front of the camera with me in the next few days. So stay tuned, and that will happen eventually. All right, so one sip. Mustache. Okay, and let's talk about the bread. Tuscan bread traditionally is unsalted, right? Here in the United States, people do not like unsalted bread. I personally only like it when I can find and source the right ingredients to go with that, which means the hardcore cold cuts, the stuff that is hyper flavored in Italy that really go well with that kind of bread. Here in America, I created a recipe that is a cross between a pugliese bread, which is a traditional Italian bread similar to the Tuscan, with the difference that it has salt, and a sourdough, because differently from Tuscans, I do not use a mother dough, but I use a sourdough starter. Before I got to the sourdough starter, I have tried so many different things. The dried yeast, the beer yeast, every little combination that I could find. And then eventually I found a book, and this is no mystery, and I talk about it even in Extra Virgin on my book, and that's how it is. I developed my recipe by studying really hard Chad Robertson tartane bakery bread, the first one, the one that he did with Eric Wolfinger. Big shout out to new daddy Eric Wolfinger. And new daddy, it's been over a year, but time is gigantic right now. So I developed my technique following that book. I will post a couple of snapshots of my bread book collection. I have about 100 books about bread, and I probably cook only 2 recipes. What is important about bread is developing your own technique. Your own technique is based about the ingredients and the tools that you use in your house. It is based on the environment that you have in your house, the temperature of your house, the drafts, your working space, the kind of oven that you have, the kind of flour that you're working. It is almost like a function. It is almost like a coronavirus model. You change one number, you change one thing, and then all of a sudden your result can change. So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, we are connecting together to do the bread process from the very beginning, from the mixing of the starter to the water and flour and all that, until the baking at 6 a.m. So I posted, as you've seen, because I've seen a bunch of people connected, all the different timing. I will try to connect a couple of minutes before to make sure that everything is on pace. If you won't have the time to be with us tomorrow, do not worry. I will try my best to repost these videos or archive them in a way where you can access them again. Alright, so between a sip and another, in random order, because I've been drinking, so that there is no specific order. Let's talk about the things that we will need tomorrow, okay? So let's talk about flour. First thing. I was able, sorry, I'll have to turn around and grab the stuff from the counter. After all, I am in Brooklyn and my counter space is a little reduced. I am working with a 00 flour. Your choice of flour is extremely important. And this is not just about the end result, because you can achieve a good end result even with crappy flour. The problem here is the starter. When you work with flours that are extremely refined or extremely processed, the amount of nutrition available, the yeast population, the bacterial population is reduced because the flour has been stripped, has been processed, so it does have less nutrients. So when you go mix it into your starter, if you use, let's say, a Pillsbury flour that is like, the basic thing that you can find, you won't see a rise that is comparable to a flour that is a bread flour like a King's Arthur or this Italian one that I have. Yesterday I did not have this flour. A friend of mine delivered it today. So yesterday I fed my starter with a flour that wasn't that great, and I'll show you the results. My starter today is not that healthy. It's not really what I wanted to show you, but it makes a sense, and you'll understand. You'll understand. Obviously, you need, measuring cups, a couple of things for the water, a couple of things for the flour, just to measure. The most important things, the two most important things when it comes to measuring is a digital scale. Digital scale is super important because it allows you to place a container on top, zero the weight, and then go specifically about the weight. One of the reasons why when we bake bread, we talk about grams and not half cups or pints or ounces, is you want to calculate the hydration of your bread. The hydration of your bread is calculated in a percentage that is the weight of the water versus the weight of the flour. So the more your bread is wet, the more bubbles will do, the more ciabatta will look. The denser is your bread, the less percentage obviously it will have. If you're confused, or if I'm confusing you, it's only because I'm drinking. Second measuring tool, your thermometer. Your thermometer, 94.8. I think I'm safe. I do use my pizza thermometer because I measure the inside of my oven. Please consider that all our appliances are different, which means that the temperature that I'm giving you, which is the maximum allowed by your oven, does not necessarily represent your appliance at home. This means that you might just want to adjust my direction to your work, but also this means that you need to keep an eye on the temperatures of your oven, because your 500 degrees or your 450, which is the maximum that you can reach on regular standard appliances. I have a 4-range KitchenAid, so nothing special. It is limited, so we gotta kind of like break them. It took me, once I got this appliance, about 3 or 4 months to figure out what was the right setting, the right temperature to bake the bread that I wanted to bake. So again, you will make mistakes, we will fuck it up. I messed it up 3 days ago and I tossed my loaf in the garbage. It happens, so don't worry. And again, I'm not professional, this is a disclaimer, so we're just here to have a moment together and hope for better times for all of us. Containers of every kind, obviously, of every kind. Another very important instrument in your house when you're baking bread is a thermometer and a hygrometer. This gives you the temperature differences in your house between the minimum and the maximum that you have reached during the day, and also gives you the minimum, maximum and current moisture in the air, the hydration of the air. How the fuck do you call it? It says it. Indoor humidity. So yes, the humidity of the air. This is very important because it allows you to understand what's happening in your kitchen or in the room where you're making your bread. The most important thing about bread is to try to stay above 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is impossible. At least today is a very crappy day here in New York, so that's why I had my problems. And also avoid cold drafts on your dough, especially when your dough is out of the oven. When you have leftover bread, you do slices, you dry it, and then we make soups or we make breadcrumbs. These are all the containers that I'm using for my rising, so that's all good. Really good mappine. We are going to crank your oven. You know, in order to make good bread, especially something, excuse me, oopsie. In order to make a good bread, especially something that is nice and blistery and bubbly, you need to push your oven to the maximum. So you gotta check the maximum temperature that you can reach. Mine goes to all the way to 500, and that's where I bring it, and I let it, you know, stay there for a while, even before I cook my bread. The secret of my bread is this. Cast iron pot, a little heavy, a little bit down, a little rusty. I bake in cast iron. Now, there's two different ways to bake in cast iron. The traditional way that people bake in cast iron, they drop the dough inside the pot and they close it with the lid and they bake it at that temperature. I have a pizza stone in the oven, so I do it differently. I go rest my dough on the pizza stone and I do cover it with the pot. Tomorrow, as we approach the different steps, we will try to tackle the different things that happen when you're warming up your oven and when you're doing all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's talk for a moment about starters really quick. I really don't want to make this too long because tomorrow will be a little intense, and I also want to give myself the time to go through your questions and stuff and maybe post something more. Somebody's asking what I'm cooking. I'm making an amatriciana tonight, making pasta. I'm tired, like I'm old. I woke up at like 5 a.m. this morning. I have no idea why. My circadian rhythms are expanding. It's you know, time is dilating for all of us. So I guess that is the hardest part. No, it is not the hardest part. The hardest part is to get sick, but thank God for the moment. Let's talk about starters. There are 3 basic ways to make bread, from what I understand. All right. There is the hardcore Tuscan way, which is using a mother dough. The mother dough is nothing more than a chunk of the dough that you're working to make bread that is already rising, that is cut from what you're going to bake, set aside in a cabinet, and used again to mix bread the day after. It is a starter by all means because it does have a population of bacteria, it does have yeast in it, so it will keep on rising overnight and will transfer its energy to whatever mix you do the day after. There is the traditional mother dough, which is obviously unsalted. It's just a mix of water and flour, but it is a dough. It is you can touch it, you can work with it, and if you want it, you can bake it, as long as you don't wait too long, because then it over ferments and it becomes you know, something different. Then you have the starter. The starter is a culture. These days everybody knows what a culture is. It's a bacteria, is a lounge room where bacteria are partying. So you feed them every day, they burp and they fart, because ultimately the gas that you do see and the bubbles that you see in the starter are nothing but the result of the metabolism of those bacteria. So the better the food is, the more they eat, the more they burp, the more they fart. It sounds weird, but it's the truth. And then the third way, which is the dry yeast. Because my environment is not controlled, because the temperature changes, I am not lying. Here and there, I help myself with dry yeast. I do not bake dry yeast bread. But if I have a starter that is messing up, acting out, if I forgot because I drank too much the night before to feed my starter, the day after I'm gonna just reuse my starter with a little bit of a dry yeast, and it absolutely does the trick. Something that traditional bakers and more religious bakers would get upset for me saying it, but there is really not much validity in saying that your starter is 140 years old, 100 years old, 30 years old. It is more of the connection of the history with the starter. It is more, it does represent where the starter comes from, but ultimately bacteria are born and die. They are living creatures. They do not last forever. So at maximum, at best, what you do hope to have inside your starter is a specific strain of bacteria that was the one that started your starter. That doesn't even mean that through the years and through the months, different bacteria or different mutations started occurring. So all of a sudden, you only have a culture of bacteria. They are farting and burping and eating the flour and water that you're giving them every night. And that's what allows you to make the bread. I do have two starters. Let's talk about it. All right, so this is, allow me to introduce my rig. I am just folding this really quick so you can see inside my bread. All right, okay, so this is the inside of my bread. Right now, my bread is on bread proof, which is a controlled temperature at 100 degrees. It's been like this since 5:23 a.m. I'm tired and I'm drunk. Inside my oven, I do have two different kind of starters. I do have my original starter, which is a few years old, and I have a new kind of starter that is actually a ballast point starter. So I use the mix of water and beer to try to grab this yeast population and see what it does. It is 3 days old, so not much is happening, but let me show you. So basically what you do is that you mix the ingredients, right? You mix the two ingredients, and then eventually you will start seeing some bubbles. This is not a super healthy starter, but allow me to explain what is important about starter. What is important about starter is the smell and not the way that it looks. It has to smell buttery, sexy, with an overtone of what's it, kamchaka? What's the name of that thing? Kombucha. With an overtone of fermentation, but it doesn't have to smell too acidic. The moment that your starter smells too acidic, that means that you're late in feeding it, and then all of a sudden it's deteriorating. So that is the time where you have to take some out and then feed it. So this is my beer starter, and this is my starter. I'll close it here for a moment just so I can, let me see if I can position myself. Oh shit, I'm pressing buttons. Okay, so I keep my oven 100 degrees and light on all day long to try to control the temperature in this thing. And this is my starter. It's actually pretty healthy. It's doing much better. All right, so it is a kind of soft, it's a little stringy, and it smells like heaven. It almost smells like a mozzarella. It is very similar to a cheese in the making. Okay, so this is what we will feed. Inside the oven, this is an operation that we will do today, but since the camera is inclined, I'll do it. In the oven, I do have the bread for tonight. Okay, so this is what we will deal tomorrow. This is my banneton with my dough. The dough is still slightly wet to the touch, but it's nice and elastic. You can see a little blistering around. You can see some bubbles that are a little more pronounced than others. I will have to say this is like a healthy bread for the moment, so we'll see how that goes. So this for the moment goes outside, not outside, but on the side. And now I'm cranking the oven. So I have a KitchenAid for burners. I run at 500 on roast until it reaches the temperature. What is important is to keep your cast iron inside. Start. All right, 500. And let me raise this a little bit so we can start feeding the starter, and then we say goodbye. So that will read. Ooh, sorry, everything is shaking. Sorry about that. Okay, so that will reach temperature in about a half hour, 45 minutes. I will let it run an extra few just to make sure that the pizza stone and the cast iron are at the same temperature of the oven, and then I'll start baking. Let's prepare our starter for tomorrow, and then I guess tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Hey Lamps, look, this is Lampo, and Lampo loves my dry bread. Here, boy. I don't know if you can see it. Let's say hi to everybody here. Come, Lampo, come here. Hey, come on. Just a boy. Hey, come and take it. Come and take it. Running away. All right, okay. So let's feed the starter. I need a spoon. One of the very important things about working with dough is always to work with lukewarm water, to have the right temperature on your water. A cold water will slow down your starter incredibly. A warm water will just make it a little too liquid too fast. So lukewarm water is water where you dip your finger and you cannot really tell the temperature. You don't know if it's hot or if it's warm or if it's cold, which is close to your body temperature. All right. So this is, sorry, excuse me. I'm gonna grab it at the sink a little bit. Okay. My digital scale. About the starter, in general, when you have a starter, I try to make about 250-300 grams every time I do a pass. In case I decide to bake more, in case I decide to give some starter to a friend, in case, I don't know, in general I'd rather have a little more than a little less. When you don't need too much though, what you can do is just simply discard most of it and only use a couple of spoons. So, try not to make too much of a mess. I'll do it in front of you like that. Look at that. Voila. Let's see the fucking mess that I'm gonna make. Oh no. You know what? I'm gonna do it like this so you can see it. Hold on, hold on. Okay. You see that I'm not the professional. I don't take too many measurements. I just go by hand. This is a very grandmother approach. I would say that this is about 2.5-3 tablespoons of starter. I have seen recipes that call for 100 grams of starter. I find that too acidic and too fast in terms of like the way that it rises. To this, I am now gonna add about 80 grams, and again, it's a little different from what you see in the book. Because I don't have the recipe in front of me. It's either 50 or 80, but today I'm adding 80 grams of flour and 80 grams of water. When it comes to measuring the ingredients for your bread, it is always easier to be precise on the water than on the flour. So I always measure the flour first, so I can adjust the water afterwards. So this is when we mix it. 29. 57, 69, favorite number, 81. 81 is a good number. My water, which I lost, okay. Ah, 79, it's okay. Between 79 and 81 is not much. And all you have to do now is just give it some love. Mix it really well. It will stay a little wet. It is not completely, it doesn't make a dough, okay? So this stays slightly on the wet side. You can see inside the way that it looks. It's like a thick cream. And it has to smell really creamy. This is actually the right adjective. It has to smell really creamy. This is what we're gonna use tomorrow morning for the bread. So I'm gonna steal a lid somewhere. This is what we're gonna use tomorrow morning. And eventually I'll feed my beer one and I'll set up everything and so on and so forth. So, get your tools together, get your ingredients together. If you don't have the time, don't worry, we will repost. I'll figure out a way to post this on the channels, it's not a problem. If you don't have your starter, we can work with dry yeast. So I can tell you tomorrow morning really quick how to get around it. It's just different percentages of water and flour. and you'll be fairly fine. It won't be a sourdough. Relax, I know you want to go out. Just give me a second. So that won't be too complicated. As far as all the rest, oh yes, final two things. These are tools that I use. So if you're planning on dropping your bread inside the cast iron, that's your thing. I do use a pizza peel to slide my bread on the stone, and parchment paper so my dough does not stick anywhere. The problem with sourdough, especially the sourdough that I make, is that it has a very high level of hydration, which means that the dough is extremely sticky. It's not something that I can roll, it's not something that I can touch with my hands that much. It limits the ability of shaping it or playing with it, but to me it's the best texture and the best crust and the only recipe that I really was able to master. Last but not least, and I don't think I've mastered, but I am happy with it, so that's what's important. The final tool is this. It's called a scorer, I think. It's just a blade. Yes, baby. It's a blade attached to a handle. If you want to decorate, if you want to score your bread, if you want to do any design on it, it's a lot of work. Yes, making bread, I see some comments coming in. It is a shitload of work, but it's extremely rewarding, and you got some time these days. So let's try to do that. So, I have posted the recipe on Facebook, and you can find it on The Toscan Gun, www.thetoscangun.com. You search for bread, that is the first recipe that comes out, and you can go through that, and you can have that tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, is that at 9 o'clock? I think that's what I posted. We'll get together to mix the dough, and we'll do it throughout the day. Mind you, the time that I'm giving this recipe is actually a little compressed, because I should be at 7 making it. Once you develop this technique, and once you develop the recipe, you can allow yourself more time in between the rising process and allow the dough to grow a little better. All right? If this works, if this rig that I built works and you guys are game, I think that maybe we should do a few more recipes. We got the time, the wife is doing much better, I would love to drag her in. But yeah, this is it. So now I'm gonna start making my pasta. I'll bake my bread later. But again, let's see what we'll be working with tomorrow. Voila! Look at that. Nice and jiggly, nice and well hydrated. So tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, and then in between, and then the bench rest, and then the second rising, and then the baking, and then the after baking, and then maybe one day we can do just like one session where I'm sitting down at the computer. Maybe we can just have a watch party and just like go through all the questions, whatever you might have. I hope you're all safe. Stay close to the people that you love. Use this time to elevate yourself, to be kind to each other, to think about who you want to be once we get out of all this. As a family, we have made a few decisions, really big decisions, that eventually we will share with you in the next few months. But we are healthy, we're home, we're cooking, and we just want to share and spend some time with you. Somebody suggested that I added a donation button. There's no need to donate. This is not for that. If you feel inclined, the work that we do here as a family is with the Food Bank of New York City. Every time we can do some charity, every time we have the opportunity to work with a company that is willing to donate, or if we want to donate our time or our money, it is the Food Bank of New York City and Feeding America. The work that they've been doing has been exceptional, always and forever, especially in these dire times that things are complicated. They truly can make a difference. Making bread on your own can make a difference in terms of your sanity, the time you spend in your kitchen, a new skill that you're going to learn, making a fantastic, delicious bread on a budget, and learn something about yourself, because you will be making a lot of mistakes. It is really not easy, and I was paranoid today before coming in, because every day with bread is different, so you really never know. So don't get frustrated. If you make a mistake, it's absolutely normal. This is not like making a pasta sauce. This is not like barbecuing. This is an art and a craft, and that's why we do have professional bakers doing it. This said, I really love you all. I miss you. I hope we can hug each other soon, And I hope next year you're gonna come and visit me in Tuscany. Ooh, I said it. Big kiss to everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Sleep tight. Have a good Sunday night. Ciao, guys.